A little bit about my background. I started music very early. My dad was an amateur pianist, and so my first recollection of music was through his playing. I began piano at about age 4, um, and from there, just continued with a classical type training on the piano. Some early musical influences. My grandfather was an admirer of music, so he grew up in the era where it was the swing era. And I remember some of the earliest things that I heard going over to his house were groups like the Mills Brothers, Frank Sinatra, a little bit of Doris Day, some Ella. And then my dad grew up in the 50s and 60s. And so that influence came in with the rock and the Beatles. So we listened to, I remember many a car trip with Dick Clark's greatest hits, Paul Anka, the British Invasion, the Kinks, the Yardbirds, those kind of things. And then, of course, in the 70s, um, my earliest memories of popular music came from my dad. So it was more kind of rock oriented. But those great like funk horn bands like Blood, Sweat and Tears, Chicago Transit Authority, I remember those kind of sounds and just really identifying with that color and just those kind of songs. It wasn't until really I got into middle school where we had a nice jazz band where I was able to play some piano in the jazz band and start to get an understanding of how that worked and what the function of that music was and how it was built from the inside out. And then in high school, I was really fortunate because we had a fantastic vocal jazz educator. His name was Jerry Wandrak, who had developed this amazing vocal jazz program at our high school. So I got to sing and play in the vocal jazz group for 4 years. And then I moved on and got the vocal jazz bug and moved on to do my undergraduate work in music education at Western Michigan University, working with, of course, Steve Zagree. And I studied privately with him as a pianist. I took arranging courses with him as well as playing and singing in his vocal jazz ensemble Gold Company. I moved on from there to earn my master's degree in jazz pedagogy from the University of Miami, where my mentor and program director was Larry Lappin. And then a few years later, I actually went back to the same program and earned my jazz performance degree, my doctorate in jazz performance from the University of Miami, where I worked again under Larry Lappin. Recently, I moved from Miami, Florida, where I was the director of the contemporary vocal program at Miami-Dade College, to Westminster College of the Arts at Rider University here in Princeton, New Jersey. Specifically, they brought me in as a visiting artist and assistant professor of popular music studies because they are trying to develop 3 brand new concentrations within their larger popular music studies area. And those are 3 concentrations, one of which is performance, one is songwriting, and the other is music production. So we're housed on the Lawrenceville campus, which is separate from the Westminster Choir College, which is on the Princeton campus. And so what I was brought in to do was to start a couple of contemporary vocal ensembles. So what I did is I created 2 vocal jazz groups right away. And of those groups, the core of one of the groups is made up from one of their very strong programs here on this campus, which is their music theater program. And so that program has about 120 students, has been around for about 7 years, and they're starting to now get some national recognition and placing students in touring companies on Broadway. So they're having some very talented students come through the program and graduate the program with some extremely talented faculty instructing them. And so when I auditioned these students, I found that their skill level was extremely high. They were well versed in contemporary styles, and not so much in singing vocal jazz in an ensemble. So we've been working very hard to reinforce and teach the concepts of ensemble sound, blend, balance, style, improvisation, tone, color, all those kind of things. And we've made some amazing progress. The students are like sponges. They're eating it up, and we're having a really wonderful time. Of the second group, the core of that group is made up of students that actually commute from the Westminster campus, which is about 10 miles away, to the Lawrenceville campus. And over on the Westminster campus, most of their experience in the choral setting is classical. A number of them have done vocal jazz in high school, or have a strong interest in contemporary music slash vocal jazz and want that experience. So they make the trip over once a week and we rehearse together. And that group, because of their choral experience and ensemble experience, we are making amazing strides and moving very quickly because I don't have to teach the concepts of sound, blend, and balance. They have those fundamental concepts. It's just teaching the style, working on improvisation, a little bit of adaptation in vowel color modification, and maybe approach to the sound of vocal jazz versus the sound they get when they're over at Westminster, which is a much of course much more classical sound. So that in and of itself is amazing because I'm able to integrate the two campuses. So I have the Westminster students integrated with the Lawrenceville students, which is making and bridging that gap, which from what I've heard has been a challenge because of how separate those two campuses are and because of how rigorous the curriculum is for most of those students over there. They just don't have a chance or opportunity to come over and interact with the students on the Lawrenceville campus. We don't actually have an instrumental program here on the Lawrenceville campus. It doesn't exist. On the Westminster campus, they have an instrumental program, but it's in piano performance, organ performance, and piano pedagogy, all classical or classically oriented. So really, the interaction between instrumentalist and vocalist for me on this campus doesn't exist. Right now I'm in the process of cultivating a program where we're going to be drawing in instrumental majors into the popular music studies area. So once we have a concerted effort for recruiting, which is starting to happen this spring and will of course continue on into next year, we'll be able to start to populate with instrumentalists that want to play contemporary and jazz music. And once that happens, I think what's going to transpire, what's going to occur, is that we're going to, because it's such a new program, we'll be able to, from the start, integrate instrumentalists, vocalists together, applying the same kind of academic rigor to both sets of students. So everything will become collaborative and will create an environment in which the instrumental major and the vocal major will be viewed in the same way. Traditionally at other schools, sometimes what you see is a bias from instrumentalists towards vocalists because of a stereotype. Maybe they think that vocalists don't have as a developed sense of musicianship, or they lack certain musical skills, and that's an unfortunate case where because of a stereotype it exists. And so a lot of the more established programs obviously pride themselves on building and training comprehensive vocal musicians that have all of those skills necessary to be considered a complete or comprehensive or competent musician. The Rider University, the College of the Arts, we have 3 tracks that we're trying to create. They're in the process to be launched next fall of 2017. And those would be performance, songwriting, and production. We, at the current time, don't offer those concentrations. So right now, a student here at Westminster College of the Arts on the Lawrenceville campus would, let's say, be a popular music studies major, which is the study of popular music, so writing, analysis, theory, those kind of things, and then the performance ensembles. So starting next fall, we'll have these Bachelor of Arts tracks, these 3 individual tracks, which would allow students to have a concentration and really get focused in on one of those particular lines or areas of study or specializations. We also have an arts administration degree here at the Lawrenceville campus, which enables students the opportunity to learn about and to get hands-on experience in the managerial part of the business, which I think is so crucial for any college student who's studying music, whether it's performance, arranging, composition, music ed. I think anybody would benefit from some of the entrepreneurial classes on grant writing. I mean, those kind of topics are, I think, universal for any 2017 music student right now, to have those skills and that knowledge base moving into the professional world. My process of arranging It comes from I guess, rather studied process. I started in high school and got very interested in the music of Gene Perling, which I was introduced to in my vocal jazz group in high school, and just trying to figure out how he achieved the sounds, the textures, the colors. And at that time, the New York Voices were just starting to come out, and that kind of sonic palette was really new to me in terms of vocal arranging, and that just kind of blew my mind with Darman's writing. So when I kind of transitioned into my undergraduate degree, I got to study with Steve Zagri, and Steve was a big proponent of playing everything. And since I'm a pianist, he required me to learn everything on the piano and be able to play all the voice parts, study them independently and individually, as well as in context. So my process has developed from those kind of fundamentals and rudiments of arranging. So the way that I perceive arranging, or kind of the way that I go about my arrangements, comes from the study of the line. And I think it's really important as a vocalist as well that the internal line or the individual line have a lot of musicality and have a lot. It's a joy to sing the individual line, but also achieve the beautiful harmonic structures, those vertical chords, and how do you weave those together. So I guess the process for me is the marriage of those two things, and trying to make the most musical expressions and gestures with my arrangements while making them interesting, unique, and creative, and fun to sing. I had a trouble when I first started arranging. I would like to throw in the kitchen sink. So when I was a young arranger, I tried to put every kind of trick in the book that I could think of that I got from Gene Perling and Darman and Phil Mattson and Claire Fisher and all these guys that I had studied. I tried to take some of their gestures and just try to throw it all in there. And I realized it didn't always work out in the best interest of the musical framework of the arrangement. So I learned to craft my arrangements in a way that had some very unique and interesting musical expressions and gestures, but not every arrangement has to have everything that you know in there. So the process that I go through, I guess, is more big picture. So I try to scope out the arrangement in terms of the conceptualization of the arrangement before I ever lay a note down on the paper. And I try to see where the arc of the song is going to be, where I want that song to climax. If the song is going to have a soli, maybe there's going to be some improvisation sections in there. How can I use the vocal ensemble to accompany that? What might the interaction be if the song has a rhythm section as well? How will the rhythm section be interacting with the vocal ensemble? I think big picture, and then I can think in small sections and really work those sections in a way that has a nice musical flow, a logical flow throughout the arrangement, and also has some very unique and interesting musical moments, and maybe some interesting colors and textures that the listener might not expect. So choosing the selections that I would use to arrange, or the songs I'm going to arrange, that process is interesting because I guess it depends on the function of the arrangement. So if I'm arranging a commission for a group, then a lot of times directors will have an idea of the song they want to have arranged, so that makes it easy. But sometimes they just have a genre or kind of a style, and so we go back and forth about song selections. I'm the kind of person that likes to try to find maybe a little bit more obscure songs that aren't overdone, and so it takes a little bit more homework and trying to dig a little bit further into the repertoire to find those songs. And they come from both the jazz standard repertoire, maybe the American Songbook, but as well as popular music. And so that process, again, is very collaborative between myself and the director. Depending on the musical aptitude or the technical ability of the group, that can create interesting challenges for me as an arranger, because writing for a group that's advanced, like the groups that I direct, allows me a lot more, let's say, flexibility in terms of what I can write, in terms of range, in terms of complexity of individual line, voice leading, those kind of things, whereas some of the younger groups just don't have that much experience. So I have some certain limitations, but those limitations for me as an arranger also make it very interesting because I have to come up with very unique and creative ways to express the arrangement within a given framework. And I think that is also, in and of itself, very interesting. As an arranger, I feel like that is really where my strength lies. I do write original music, but the amount of music that I write that's original compared to the amount of music that I've either orchestrated or arranged is not even close. So I would say that my strength lies in my ability to arrange and orchestrate music more than it does in the actual original composition of music. So the issue of copyright, and for arrangers, I also would say music publishing, is a complex issue. I think it's becoming more accessible now in 2017 than it has in the past. In the past, you had the big guys like Hal Leonard and Alfred were the big ones. They would be the ones that would say, okay, we're going to have our staff writers, and we're going to issue a certain number of songs for each writer, and they'll write those number of songs per year, and they'll be published. Obviously, before the internet, all of it was print publishing. And then, of course, the big thing then was copywriting and copyright infringement when people would Xerox copies of music. Nowadays, with the internet, with PDFs sharing and all this kind of stuff, and digital distribution, things have changed a little bit in the world of publishing and copyright, making it more accessible for arrangers like myself to get some of my music out to directors, choral directors around the country. It still is a little bit challenging because those large publishers like Hal Leonard and Alfred have their staff arrangers, and those staff arrangers are the ones that are paid to do that job throughout the year, and they have X number of arrangements that they have to produce. But for arrangers like me, who are doing commissions and doing not as much work as staff arrangers, we're able to now pay for licensing of arrangements either directly from the publishers themselves, or there's a third-party company that has come up to prominence in the last couple of years named called Trisona. And so Trisona Music is doing a lot of that legwork, protecting the copyright for the artist, the composer, the lyricist. I'm a huge advocate, of course, for those artists, the creators of the work, to get their due. Of course, they deserve to have the royalties paid to them. In the past, there's been some gray area on the side of the arrangers. You have a group, you want to make a custom arrangement, you arrange a song for your group and you perform it. Of course, that is not legal to do, as we've discovered through some of this legalities that have come to kind of fruition in I would say the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years, where some of the larger publishers are really making sure to check licensing on a lot of these arrangements when they take them to, let's say, a show choir competition, into the vocal jazz world, like all state conventions, things like that. There's a little bit more, they're being more judicious about making sure that all the copyrights are legal and binding, let's say, and that the arrangers have paid for the licensing of that work. The challenge is for us as arrangers is figuring out how we can make that happen if we're not signed to a publisher. So I have some of my work published through Sound Music Publications, which is Frank DeMiro's company, wonderful company, and it has a whole list of wonderful arrangers and arrangements on there. My first experience with publishing, I got published last year of my undergraduate work at Western Michigan University. I was able to get published through UNC, the University of Northern Colorado's Jazz Press, which was amazing. So I started to learn about the legalities of publishing early on. And then, of course, having songs or arrangements recorded, then doing your homework and figuring out where is the legal standpoint of being able to record a song that is an original arrangement. Is that covered if you pay the royalties for the use of the song? Is the arrangement covered? And there's some legalities that I would encourage arrangers out there that are trying to get their work published. If you're going to use those arrangements, make sure that you have done your due diligence and you do the homework and the research to make sure that you are covering your bases in terms of making sure everything is legal and binding, and that you're protected, and that you're actually paying those licensing rights, so that the composers and lyricists receive those royalties. I'm really excited because I just last month released my very first solo album, On the Sunny Side, which is a collaboration between me and about 13 of Miami's finest jazz musicians. The album features Grammy Award winner Brian Lynch on trumpet and Grammy Award winner Ed Kaye on tenor saxophone. And I'm so excited and very proud of this album. It was a collaborative process, like I said. The album itself took about 3 months to record, and it was a challenge because there's about 13 musicians on the album. It was impossible to try to coordinate all 13 musicians' schedules. So what we did is we started by recording the rhythm section part, so bass, drums, piano, as the core, and around that we would bring in either 1 or 2 musicians at a time to record their parts and kind of assemble the project of the album. All the arrangements on the album are mine. This is a solo vocal project, except for the last cut, which is an a cappella arrangement that I wrote, in which I recorded all the voice parts. But it's an exploration of interpretations of jazz standards. I threw a Beatles song on there, Norwegian Wood, which is a very interesting adaptation interpretation. And then the album culminates with an arrangement I wrote of a song written by Shaka Khan and Bruce Hornsby called Love Me Still, an a cappella, about 9-part arrangement. And I'm just so excited because the energy that was created by the collaboration of all these players that I got from Miami was phenomenal. And the gifts that they brought and the musical contributions to the album were amazing and incredible. So I've been getting some very, very positive responses to the album. That was about a year and a half's worth of work to finally go from recording to mixing to mastering to final graphic and all that. So it's been a work in progress, but I'm so thrilled to have it out and into the world, and starting to have people have the opportunity to experience my music and some of my arrangements. It's interesting because in that project, the last song, the a cappella arrangement, has so far gotten the most feedback from audience and from people that have heard the music. And I've got some questions sent to me through my Facebook page, my website, and a lot of people have asked, do you have an album of just a cappella music, of you singing and your arrangements? And I said, no, I don't. So they simply said, well, you should, because that's our favorite cut on the album. So I think, based on the feedback I'm getting and some of the responses, and my love, of course, for vocal arranging, I think that might be starting this summer, a project that I undertake of writing a cappella vocal arrangements, an album's worth of these, for me to record and release in the future. So I think that's something that I'm really excited about and looking forward to doing. A lot of my energy and time right now is spent developing and cultivating the program here at Westminster College of the Arts. There's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of support from the administration for this program to succeed and to grow. And so having that kind of energy behind you really just makes my job so much easier and makes it so much more urgent to do it, because I have the students and the administration who want to see this program succeed. So right now we're in the process of recruiting. And so right now I'm traveling around the eastern part of the United States. I'll be doing some clinic work coming up where I'll be working with high school ensembles and high school students and directors in festivals and competitions. That's really, really exciting. Coming up actually next week, I've been invited to present at the National American Choral Directors Association convention being held in Minneapolis. The title of that session is Learning from Our Legacy, Collegiate Vocal Jazz. And I've assembled a panel of some of the the program directors that are now teaching at the most established programs for vocal jazz education in the country. So I've got Kate Reed from the University of Miami, Greg Jaspers from Western Michigan University, and Jamie Hsu out in Los Angeles. And the four of us will be talking about the trends as we see them now currently in vocal jazz education, and where vocal jazz education is moving in the next 5 or 10 years. And we'll be identifying, again, some of the industry trends, so what we see the music industry, where they're going, how that reflects the skill sets that the students should have leaving an undergraduate vocal jazz collegiate program, understanding the recording industry, understanding where the music is going in terms of how you see groups like Snarky Puppy and some of these more contemporary groups using contemporary music, let's say pop music, fused with jazz, and how that works. I think it's very interesting to see how vocal jazz is starting to embrace even more of a wide range of music and styles than before. I think a lot of times, historically speaking, we see vocal jazz coming from the swing era and groups like the High-Lows and the Four Freshmen and that kind of historical context. But we see as we move through, with groups like the Manhattan Transfer, starting to bridge that gap of, is it pop, is it jazz? It kind of fuses everything. The New York Voices come along and use some more extended harmony, but still incorporating popular music into their repertoire. And now with the kind of proliferation of a cappella groups, starting, let's say, with Take Six, of course Singers Unlimited, but moving forward to Take Six, and all the groups that have kind of come after Take Six and have been influenced by Take Six, you see just the widest range of repertoire, the real group, drawing from the jazz standard repertoire, the American Songbook, but moving right through popular music, but doing it in such a musical way with really interesting harmony, a really great sense of a rhythmic approach. I think that is such an amazing thing, and I think we're seeing that proliferation in groups featured on this program, groups from Brazil. That kind of multiculturalism, and I just love the fact that we have such a wide range of groups embracing contemporary vocal harmony and vocal arranging, but bringing their unique cultural influences to that. It's really, really exciting. Coming from having a background and training in piano, I think piano for any arranger or vocalist is essential, and I think it's a skill that every musician should develop. Whether you're an instrumentalist that is a horn player, a singer, an arranger, having really good fundamental piano skills is imperative to your musical development, especially as an arranger, composer, to your musical vocabulary and understanding of harmony. I'm so grateful that I started on piano. As an arranger, the orchestra is laid out, literally in front of me every time I sit down at the piano, and understanding relationships and understanding texture and color by being able to play that and being able to sit down with some of the most incredible vocal arrangements, like I mentioned before, of Gene Perling, the New York Voices, even my contemporaries, Carrie Marsh, Matt Falker, Greg Jaspers, Jennifer Barnes, all these wonderful, Jeremy Fox, all these wonderful arrangers. I can sit down, literally take their creative, output right at the piano and play and just and figure out how they achieve their musical gestures. And I think having that skill makes it so much easier to arrange, makes it so that you can express all those musical ideas that you have as an arranger. You can get them out because you have the functionality of the keyboard. And of course, being able to play and accompany yourself as a vocalist, I've been doing that for years. I think it's just one of the most critical skills. You look at Nina Simone, Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae, all had really wonderfully developed sense of piano skills. Aretha Franklin. So to be able to sit down and play, it just improves everything about your musicality, your time, your feel, your understanding of harmony, especially if you're going to be an improvising musician. So to be able to hear harmony vertically and to be able to hear all those notes, be able to play notes that you are hearing in your head to relate them to the harmony. I mean, I think that's just so imperative for any vocalist.